So if you're listening, I'm guessing you've hit that point in your career. You've looked at the, I don't know, the Q3 profit and loss statement or maybe your quarterly review and just thought,
Well, it has to be something more.
exactly, I need something different. You're looking for a career where your skills actually serve a mission, a job with real meaning, and a way to use what you already know for, some kind of social good.
And that is such a pivotal moment. But it's one that really needs strategy, not just a burst of motivation.
Right.
So today, we're really zeroing in on the practical steps, the deep analysis required for that career transition into the nonprofit sector. Seems like a simple switch, but it's not.
No, it's a whole journey. And our sources today, which are mostly built around the Nonprofit.Courses framework, they lay out this really structured path.
It's a great resource. We're going to use it as our guide. It's just this huge library of videos, courses, with all kinds of experts giving their perspectives. It's sort of the perfect place to get a wrap-up on the entire space.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to move through the process just like the sources do. We'll start with the really personal stuff, finding your mission, and then get into the very practical side of it.
Cataloging your skills, finding those knowledge gaps.
And preparing for what can be a pretty big cultural shift. Our mission here is to figure out what it actually takes to swap that business suit for a mission-driven career. Moving from why am I doing this to how do I do that successfully?
Right. Let's get into it. So for anyone even thinking about this move,
Yeah.
the very first thing, the absolute non-negotiable step, is to recognize the fundamental difference between the two worlds.
For-profit versus nonprofit.
Exactly. Nonprofits are, by their very definition, mission-driven. That mission is their core identity, and it dictates absolutely everything.
Everything. Like what?
A culture, the budget constraints, the pace of work, and this is critical, the level of dedication it requires from every single person on staff.
Yeah.
From the CEO all the way down.
That idea of dedication really is the gatekeeper, isn't it? The sources just keep coming back to that.
Yeah.
That the people who get hired and actually succeed are the ones who are just profoundly dedicated to the mission.
You could have the best credentials in the world, be a top-tier CPA, but if you don't genuinely care about, say, finding homes for shelter animals,
Yeah.
that gap is going to show.
Oh, for sure. It'll show up as burnout, low morale. You'll just disconnect from your team so quickly.
Exactly. That dedication, it's like the psychological fuel. It's what allows you to deal with maybe lower pay or slower processes or the fact you don't have enough resources, all the hurdles we'll get into later.
So the very first step is existential. It's finding the missions that really, truly resonate with you, where your personal history and your professional goals just click.
Yes, you have to connect that feeling you get when you see a need with a specific cause you can act on.
And the sources do a great job of making this tangible. They give these really specific, powerful examples of what that spark of dedication looks like. It's not just an idea, it's an experience.
Let's talk about those. They're so illustrative. The first one is about the person who walked for miles in the freezing rain to raise money for cancer research.
Right, because they had watched a friend or a family member go through chemo.
Yes. And in that moment, fundraising isn't just a task. It's a personal vow. It's this fusion of physical effort and just massive empathy.
Then there's the second example, which is more about civic duty. The person who goes to every single town meeting to protect a piece of land they love.
Fighting tooth and nail to stop a favorite park or a historic site from being developed, that feeling of defending something local, something that's yours. That's the wellspring for a career in advocacy or environmental work.
So specific. And the third one combines gratitude with like a call to action.
Right. Maybe you got a great education from your old school, so you want to give back. But when you get involved, you see the students today have even bigger challenges than you did.
Technology gaps, resource shortages.
And that mix of personal gratitude and seeing a really pressing current need. That's the kind of momentum you need to make a real career shift stick.
Well, what's so interesting is that the sources basically treat this dedication as a predictor of success. If you already have that willingness to work hard because of that personal connection, you're much more likely to succeed.
It makes perfect sense.
So for the listener who feels those sparks of passion, how do they turn that into a real tactical first step?
The sources recommend something very practical. Get the free list of missions that's available. The goal here isn't to find the perfect mission on day one.
It's more about elimination, right?
Exactly. It's about elimination and confirmation. It stops you from being paralyzed by having, 1,000 choices.
So you take this huge philosophical question, what's my purpose? And you turn it into a sorting exercise.
You go through the list, you cross off the missions you just can't do. Maybe you love animals, but you can't handle the medical side of it.
Okay, so you eliminate some.
Then you circle the ones you already know you love, and you maybe consider some you'd never thought of before. It gives you a manageable portfolio of passions, and you have to have that before you can even think about skills. The mission always comes first.
Okay, so mission and motivation are the foundation. Got it. But you can't run a food bank on good intentions alone, right? Strategy means we have to talk about competence.
Right, and this is where the sources lay out a brilliant framework. They break down all the work in the nonprofit world into 3 essential skill categories.
And understanding these 3 categories is vital.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they tell you how much work the transition will be. Is it a simple translation of your skills, or do you need to go back to school for 4 years?
Let's start with category 1, program skills.
These are the frontline skills, the ones that directly deliver the organization's mission. They are the whole reason the nonprofit exists.
So if the mission is helping the homeless.
The program skills are things like certified rehabilitation counseling, social work, case management. If it's a school, you need certified teachers. A health clinic needs nurses and doctors.
And here's the big barrier for most people coming from the business world. They don't have the licenses or the certifications for these jobs.
It's the hard wall. You
Yeah.
can't just walk in from a 20-year career in finance and start counseling a vulnerable person or teaching a classroom. It's often illegal.
Right.
And getting those certifications takes a lot of time, 2, 3, 4 years for a degree, and a lot of money. It's a huge commitment.
But wait, let me push back on that a little. What if your background is in, say, supply chain management, and the nonprofit is a huge food bank? Isn't that skill a program skill that's directly transferable?
That's a great question, and the sources draw a very fine line there. If your skill is just moving boxes efficiently, that's more of a Category 2 skill of business equivalent. But if your skill is managing the distribution of, say, federally regulated medical supplies, and you need special certifications to handle that inventory, now you're back in program skill territory.
I see. So the barrier is usually a legal or regulatory requirement?
Exactly. It's tied to the sensitive nature of delivering the mission. But there is a workaround.
Okay.
The sources mention that you can look for lower-level positions, aid or support roles, that don't require the full certification. Some organizations offer on-the-job training for those.
What? And this is the big catch, isn't it? Because the barrier to entry is lower for those jobs, they're usually less well paid.
It's a trade-off. You can get into the mission faster, but probably at a more junior level with a lower starting salary.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to category 2. This seems like the sweet spot for most career changers.
It really is.
Okay.
Category 2 is skills with business equivalents. This is where your corporate experience is incredibly valuable.
We're talking about the backbone of any organization, really. Accounting, HR, marketing, IT.
Facilities management, legal, all of it. A big international charity can be just as complex to run as a Fortune 500 company.
But, and the sources are very clear on this, the skills might be similar, but they also profoundly different in the nonprofit context.
This is where the friction happens. You can't just copy and paste a corporate marketing plan and expect it to work.
Let's spend some time here. Let's take HR. In a corporation, HR is about hiring, firing, performance reviews tied to profit.
And minimizing legal liability.
Right. What's different in a nonprofit?
Well, the complexity just explodes because you're not managing 2 groups of people, management and staff. You're managing 3. Management, paid staff, and volunteers.
Ah, volunteers. That's a huge difference.
It's a whole different legal and motivational framework. You can't manage a volunteer who gives you 10 hours a week the same way you manage a full-time salaried employee. The laws are different. Everything is different.
And HR becomes the keeper of the culture, too, right? They're not just looking for skills anymore.
They're vetting for mission alignment. A corporate HR manager asks, can you increase our productivity? A nonprofit HR manager asks, can you increase our productivity while upholding the values of our mission? It's a fundamental shift.
Okay, let's do the same thing for accounting and finance. In business, it's pretty simple. Maximize revenue, cut costs, report profits. What's the big change in the nonprofit world?
One concept, restricted funds.
Yeah.
This is probably the single biggest operational difference.
Explain that.
In a company, if you make $100, you can spend that $100 on anything you want. It's unrestricted. In a nonprofit, a donor or a grant might give you $100, but say, you can only use this to buy books for the library.
So you can't use it to pay the librarian's salary.
Exactly, or to fix the leaky roof. So the accounting department has to manage this incredibly complex web of restrictions. The skill of debiting and crediting is the same, but the tracking and reporting is a nightmare.
Because you have to prove to every single donor that you spent their money exactly how they told you to.
Yes. And if you mess that up, you can lose their trust, lose future funding, and even face legal trouble. A corporate CPA has to get up to speed on fund accounting very, very quickly.
And what about marketing? The skills are the same, SEO, social media, content, but the goal is totally different.
The goal shifts from driving a sale
Mhm.
to building a relationship.
Mm.
You're not selling a product. You're selling a feeling, an idea, a call to action.
So the metrics you track are different. It's not about ROI.
No, it's about how many new volunteers you recruited, or how many people signed your petition, or how many donors you retained from last year. You have to translate your business marketing brain into a mission promotion brain.
So the big takeaway for category 2 is that you have to focus on getting versed how they compare. You need that context-specific training.
You absolutely do.
Which brings us to category 3, skills that are basically unique to nonprofits. This is where the learning curve is steepest.
It is, but it's also where some business skill can give you a really powerful kind of hidden advantage.
Okay, so what are these unique skills?
Fundraising or development is number one by far. Then you have things like grant proposal writing, program evaluation, which is measuring your impact, volunteer management, and for schools, student recruiting.
And the sources say that people from backgrounds like high-level sales or PR often have a leg up here, especially with fundraising.
For sure. At their core, both sales and fundraising are about building relationships, identifying a need, presenting a solution, and closing the deal.
So a top salesperson already has the raw talent.
They have the relationship building and the closing skills, yes, but, and this is a huge but, the sources warn that they will still face a bit of a learning curve.
Why is that curve so critical?
Because the ethical and legal framework is completely different. In sales, it's a transaction. I give you a product, you give me money. In fundraising, it's about stewardship. You give me money, and I make a solemn promise to use it to achieve a mission.
The trust factor is so much higher.
It's everything. You have to learn the specific rules about donor privacy, solicitation, reporting. A sales background just doesn't prepare you for that. That learning curve is non-negotiable.
And it's so important that we really need to do a deeper dive on fundraising itself, just to show how complex it is.
Let's do it. It's the perfect example of why you need specialized knowledge, even if you have strong foundational skills.
So the first thing the sources point out is that fundraising isn't just one job. It's a whole profession with its own subspecialties.
Right. You have generalists, usually at smaller nonprofits where they have to do a little bit of everything. But most fundraisers gravitate toward a specialty that fits their personality and their skills.
And if you're thinking about this career, you have to know what those are. You can't just say, I want to be a fundraiser. It's too broad.
It's like saying, I want to be a doctor. Okay, but what kind?
Yeah.
A surgeon, a pediatrician, they're totally different jobs.
So let's break down the 3 big subspecialties from the source material. First up is direct mail, digital, and annual giving.
This is the high-volume approach. Lots of letters, lots of emails, trying to get a large number of smaller, repeatable gifts.
So this is very data-driven.
Extremely. The skill set here is all about data science, logistics, and mass communication. You're managing huge databases, A/B testing your emails, analyzing response rates. If you were a digital marketer or a data analyst in the corporate world, this is a very natural fit.
But you still have to learn the nonprofit-specific rules about donor communication.
Of course. Now, at the completely other end of the spectrum is planned giving.
This sounds serious.
It is. This is about securing very large future gifts through things like wills, trusts, and life insurance policies.
So this isn't a quick relationship.
No, this is a relationship you might build over decades. The skill set is highly specialized. You often need a background in law or financial planning. You have to understand tax law, estate planning,
And you need a ton of patience.
and absolute trustworthiness. You're talking to people about their legacy. A planned giving officer is focused on securing a $5 million gift that might not arrive for 30 years. It's a very different mindset.
Okay, and the third one is the one I think most people picture when they hear fundraising.
Major gifts.
Right. The face-to-face ask for a really big check, 6 or 7 figures.
This is all about personal relationships, identifying people who have the capacity and interest to give a major gift, cultivating that relationship over months or years, and then at the right time, making the ask.
This is where those top corporate sales execs can really shine.
They can. But this is also where that learning curve hits the hardest. In sales, you ask for money and give a product. Here, you ask for money and you get the opportunity to be part of solving a major problem.
The emotional intelligence required must be off the charts.
It is. And the role is incredibly stressful. You need to be a great researcher, a great listener, and you have to be able to convey the urgency of the mission flawlessly. You have to make the donor feel like a partner, not an ATM.
So understanding these three specialties, direct mail, planned giving, and major gifts, is critical. It lets you target your learning. You don't take a general fundraising course.
No, you take a specific course on major gift solicitation or the essentials of planned giving, which leads us perfectly into how you actually acquire this knowledge.
Right. Leveraging educational content for the transition. The mission is clear, the skills are inventoried, the gaps are identified. Now you have to fill them.
And the sources break the content down into two essential types. There's Type A for career navigation and Type B for the technical skills.
Let's start with Type A career content. What is that exactly?
This is the content made by seasoned nonprofit pros about the job itself. It's less about the mechanics of how to write a grant and more about the culture, the career path, how to survive and thrive.
It's the words of wisdom content.
Exactly. It's the insider perspective. It prepares you for the interview, sure, but it also prepares you for the reality of the job. Things like how to deal with the emotional toll of the work, or how to navigate the politics between the board of directors and the staff.
You can't get that from a textbook, and the sources say this content is still valuable even after you get the job, right? For helping you advance your career.
Absolutely. Then you have Type B technical content. This is the hard skills training.
Binge watching for skill.
That's what the source recommends, yeah.
Yeah.
Targeted videos and courses on a specific skill. If you know you need to learn fund accounting or grant writing or volunteer retention, this is where you go.
And it's great for exploration, too. Before you commit to a whole university program, you can dip your toe in the water.
Exactly. You can take a course on direct mail copywriting and realize, you know what? I hate this. I am not a data person. Then you can pivot and try a course on major donor cultivation and find your sweet spot.
And the platform itself is really accessible. Lots of different experts, different voices, and a lot of the content is free.
Which is huge when you're in the middle of a career change and maybe watching your budget. And the sources also suggest signing up for the new course alerts.
To stay current.
Yes. The nonprofit sector changes constantly. New laws, new tech. You have to be a continuous learner.
Okay, so we've built the whole foundation. Mission, skills, education plan. But the sources are really honest. They say the move from business or government to a nonprofit won't always be smooth.
That's an understatement. It's a full-scale cultural immersion, and you have to be prepared for the friction.
Let's talk about those hard truths. The first one everyone thinks of is pay. The sources say it's sometimes lower.
Sometimes, yes. Especially at smaller organizations where every single dollar has to go to the mission. But, and this is important, they immediately say, but not always.
It depends on the size of the nonprofit and your skill set.
Exactly. A huge hospital system or a major university will often pay very competitively for senior roles. And if you have a highly sought-after skill, like cybersecurity or major gift fundraising, your salary can absolutely match the corporate world. You have to do your research.
The second hurdle, and maybe the toughest one, is the cultural differences. The sources say they can be frustrating.
That's where the real friction is. You're moving from a culture of competition and speed to a culture of collaboration and consensus.
Let's get specific. In a corporation, if the CEO wants new software, they buy new software. How does that work in a nonprofit?
It slows to a crawl. The decision might have to go through a senior management team, then a finance committee, then the full board of directors.
And the board is often made of volunteers who only meet once a month.
So that decision that took 6 weeks in your old job might take 6 months now. And for someone used to corporate speed, that is intensely frustrating.
And it's not just bureaucracy for the sake of it. It goes back to those restricted funds we talked about.
It all does. A manager might see a desperate need for new computers, but if all their funding is restricted to direct program delivery buying food, paying teachers, they legally cannot spend it on administrative overhead.
Even if that overhead would make them more efficient.
Right. It feels like you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back, and it changes how you even define success. In business, success is profit. Easy to measure. What is it in a nonprofit?
Impact.
And impact is so much harder to quantify. Did you actually increase literacy rates? Did you reduce stigma around a social issue? The metrics are complex, they're long-term, and they require those specialized program evaluation skills.
So cultural fluency is just as important as technical skill. And finally, networking. You can have the passion and the skills, but that doesn't just land you a job.
No. Like any industry, jobs are found through people. And the sources are very specific here. They recommend getting external support from a networking group, like the Nonprofit Career Network.
Why is that so important?
For a few reasons. First, you meet people who are already in the sector. That's your network. Second, they help you tailor your resume and your story for nonprofit hiring managers. You have to speak their language.
And third, it's just good support to have during a job hunt, which can be pretty lonely.
Exactly. And just to put a button on all this advice, it's important to know who it's coming from. The author behind the Nonprofit.Courses framework is Matt Hug.
And his background gives this whole thing a lot of weight.
He does. He's not just some academic. He's a career fundraiser. He's been in the trenches. But he also has deep teaching credentials.
He's taught at places like the University of Pennsylvania, Eastern University.
And guest lectured at Drexel and Villanova. So he has this perfect blend of high-level theory and practical, on-the-ground experience. The advice is solid because it's been tested in the real world.
Right. It's advice you can trust.
So for you, the listener who's ready for this shift, let's just quickly summarize the journey. It's a deliberate path. First, you find that mission that connects with your personal story.
Then you inventory your skills across those three categories: program, business equivalent, and the unique nonprofit skills.
Third, you commit to that targeted education. You get the cultural wisdom and the technical training you need to fill your gaps. And finally, you build your network and you brace yourself for the cultural hurdles.
It's a path where you're really trading transactional success
Yeah.
for impact. And we've talked a lot about translating your technical skills like accounting or HR. But the sources keep saying the mindset shift is the hardest part.
It's a seismic shift in your professional identity. You're moving from a world where your value is measured in quick, tangible profits to a world where it's measured in slow, messy, long-term social change.
Which really brings us to the final thought for you to consider as you start this deep dive. If your whole career has trained you to chase those quick wins, to associate profit with your personal worth, what do you have to unlearn? Which part of that business and conditioning, the specific skill you used, or that ingrained urgent need to maximize profit do you think you'll have to consciously let go of to really thrive in a culture that's defined by a long-term mission-based impact? That's the real challenge. It's about transitioning your heart, not just your resume.